Liana Okafor woke up early that morning in her small but neat apartment in Lusaka Heights. The city was just starting to breathe. Cars passing, birds calling, sunlight slipping through the curtains. She liked mornings because they were quiet, and quiet helped her think. At 26, Liana was not loud or dramatic. She was the kind of woman who planned carefully, trusted deeply, and believed things would work out if she stayed honest. She picked up her phone, opened her banking app, and prepared to pay her rent like she did every month. She typed in the amount, pressed confirm, and froze. The screen flashed red. Access denied. Account restricted. Her heart skipped. She blinked and tried again. Same message. Her fingers started to shake. Panic crept in slowly, then all at once. Rent was due today. Bills were waiting. This account was her safety, her ground. She called the bank helpline immediately. After a long hold, a calm voice answered. Miss Okafor, the agent said, your account is currently under family authorization review. Family authorization. The words hit harder than the error message. Liana felt a cold wave move through her chest. Family? She already knew who that meant. Her parents. Memories rushed in. Moments she had ignored for years. The way her parents always asked about her finances. The way they insisted on helping. The documents they made her sign without clear explanations. And then her grandfather, Emmanuel Okafor. The man who raised her with kindness. The man who once told her, this is for your future. Only yours. A trust fund. Liana sat back on her bed, phone still in her hand, her breath uneven. Something was very wrong. And for the first time in her life, she wondered if the people she trusted most were the ones quietly pulling the ground from under her feet. Liana had always believed her life was simple. Not easy but clear. Study hard, work honestly, stay close to family. That belief started to crack the moment she began thinking about her grandfather, Emmanuel Okafor. Emmanuel wasn't just her grandfather. He was her safe place. After Liana's grandmother passed away, he became quieter but also more intentional. He used to sit with her on the veranda in the evenings, telling her stories about discipline, independence, and dignity. When she turned 20, he told her something that stayed with her forever. I've set something aside for you, he said gently. Not to make you lazy. To make you free. That something was a trust fund. Later she learned the amount, $680,000. Sounded unreal even now. Emmanuel had been very clear. The money was for Liana alone. Not for her parents. Not for family emergencies. Not for control. He wanted her to have choices in a world that rarely gave young women any. After Emmanuel passed away, everything changed quietly. Her parents, Ruth and Daniel Okafor, became extra caring. Almost too caring. They checked in constantly. They asked about her job, her rent, her plans. They always said it was love. We just want to guide you, her mother would say with a soft smile. You're still young. Liana remembered the papers. The ones they asked her to sign shortly after the funeral. They said it was routine family paperwork, and just to simplify things. She trusted them. She didn't read every line. Why would she? They were her parents. Now sitting alone in her apartment, those memories felt heavy. She replayed the moments when her father insisted on handling bank-related matters. The times her mother warned her not to talk about money outside the family. At the time it felt protective. Now it felt controlling. The realization hurt more than the frozen account. It wasn't just about money. It was about trust. The people who taught her right from wrong may have crossed a line they never warned her about. For the first time, Liana felt something break inside her. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet crack where certainty used to be. She had spent years believing her parents were on her side. Now she wasn't sure whose side they were on. She wiped her face, took a deep breath, and stood up. Avoiding this would only make it worse. Whatever they had done, she needed to hear it from them directly. Liana picked up her keys and bag. Her hands were steady now, even though her heart wasn't. Fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Clarity. If her future was being decided behind her back, she was done staying silent. It was time to confront the truth, no matter how painful it turned out to be. Kairundu Valley estate looked the same as always. Wide lawns, soft lights, the smell of food drifting through the open windows. It was the kind of place where everything appeared calm, expensive, and controlled. When Liana arrived, her mother greeted her with a warm hug as if nothing in the world was wrong. Her father sat at the head of the table, scrolling on his phone. Her sister laughed in the kitchen, setting plates like it was any other family dinner. For a moment, Liana almost doubted herself. Maybe the bank issue was a mistake. Maybe she was overthinking everything. They ate. talked about traffic, neighbors, and work. Her mother kept adding food to Liana's plate, smiling too much. Her father barely looked at her. The normality felt heavy, like a mask stretched too tight. Halfway through dinner, Liana put her fork down. I tried to pay my rent this morning, she said carefully. My account was blocked. The bank said it's under family authorization review. The room went quiet. Her mother's smile disappeared instantly. Why would you even call the bank without talking to us first? Ruth snapped, her voice sharp and loud. Do you know how embarrassing that is for the family? Liana blinked. Embarrassing? Mom, I couldn't access my own money. Her mother stood up suddenly, chair scraping the floor. After everything we've done for you? We protected you. You're too young to handle that kind of money alone. Then her father finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost bored. That money was never really yours, Daniel said flatly. The words landed like a slap. Liana stared at him. What did you just say? He leaned back in his chair. Your grandfather was old. Emotional. He made decisions without thinking long-term. We're your parents. We stepped in to manage things properly. So you blocked my account? Liana asked, her voice shaking now. Without telling me? Her sister rolled her eyes. Honestly, Liana, you're being dramatic. Mom and Dad are right. You would have wasted it anyway. At least now it stays in the family. That hurt almost as much as her father's words. So you tried to take control of the trust fund, Liana said slowly. Behind my back. Her mother crossed her arms. We did what we had to do. One day you'll thank us. Liana felt her chest tighten. The people she trusted most were sitting right in front of her, defending something that felt like a betrayal. No apology. No explanation. Just control. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She stood up quietly. I trusted you, she said. That's what hurts. Her father looked away. Her mother scoffed. Her sister stayed silent. Liana grabbed her bag and walked out. Once she reached her car, the tears came fast and heavy. But even as she cried, something inside her stayed strong. They had taken her trust. They hadn't taken her voice. And this wasn't the end. Liana drove through the streets of Livingstone City, her mind racing faster than the car. The sunset painted the buildings gold, but she barely noticed. Every thought circled back to that dinner, her frozen bank account, and her parents' cold, controlling words. She needed answers. Not guesses. Not half-truths. Real answers. That's why she found herself sitting across from Ebony Mensah in a small law office tucked between a cafe and a clothing store. Ebony was known in the city as a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer who didn't scare easily and didn't take shortcuts. Liana liked that immediately. She explained everything. Her frozen account, her parents' betrayal, the trust her grandfather had left, and the documents they had forced her to sign. Ebony listened quietly, taking notes, occasionally nodding. When Liana finished, she leaned back and smiled, almost teasingly. Let's see what they really did, she said. They pored over the trust deed. Line by line. Paragraph by paragraph. Hours passed, and Liana felt the tension in her chest grow tight and heavy. Then Ebony paused. Wait. Look at this, she said, pointing at a small, almost hidden clause tucked near the end of the document. Liana squinted. What does it say? If the trustees, or anyone including your parents, try to take control of the funds before you reach full legal access, the money transfers immediately and fully to the beneficiary, Ebony explained. That means, if they try to override you, the trust automatically belongs to you. Liana's stomach dropped, then lifted in shock. So, they made a huge mistake? Exactly, Ebony said, her eyes sparkling. They thought they could manipulate the trust quietly. But this clause, your grandfather put it there for a reason, is like a trap. If they interfere, you win everything. A mix of fear, relief, and excitement surged through Liana. She had felt powerless at dinner. She had felt trapped when her account was blocked. But now, for the first time, she realized she held the upper hand. Ebony leaned forward. They won't stop easily. They'll try rumors, intimidation, maybe even emergency petitions. But legally you're protected. You have the leverage. Liana nodded, determination hardening inside her. Then we fight, she said quietly. I'm not letting them steal this from me. Ebony smiled again. Good. Because this is just the beginning. Once they realize you know the clause, the real battle starts. And trust me, they won't see it coming. Liana left the office that evening with her head held high. The streets of Livingstone were now full of possibility instead of fear. The legal war had begun, but for the first time she felt ready. Her grandfather had prepared her. Even if her parents hadn't. This time she would not lose. After discovering the hidden clause, Liana thought she had the upper hand. But her parents weren't going to let her win quietly. Almost immediately their attacks began. Not in court, not with lawyers, but at home and in whispers across the extended family. Phone calls stopped. Text messages went unanswered. Her parents didn't outright speak to her anymore. Every attempt she made to reach them was met with cold silence. It wasn't just ignoring her. It was a deliberate freeze, a way to make her feel small and powerless. The warmth she had once counted on from her family disappeared overnight. Then came the rumors. Messages spread through the family WhatsApp group, subtle comments at family gatherings, casual hints from distant cousins. Liana is stressed lately, someone would say. She's been acting unpredictable. Some even whispered she might be mentally unstable. Liana felt the sting of betrayal again, this time multiplied by the voices of people who didn't know the full story but chose to believe the narrative her parents fed them. The next move was legal. Daniel and Ruth hired lawyers and filed an emergency petition to try to freeze the trust before Liana could assert her rights fully. She received the notice one quiet morning, her hands trembling as she held the envelope. Her heart sank. She sat on her bed for what felt like hours, staring at the paper, imagining the court ruling in their favor. The panic from months ago returned tenfold. For a moment, Liana thought about giving up. She thought about handing the matter over quietly, retreating, pretending the trust didn't matter. The pressure felt suffocating. But then she remembered Ebony's words during their last meeting. "They're panicking," the lawyer had said with a calm, steady voice. "That means you're winning. The more desperate they act, the clearer it is that they're afraid. Stay focused. Don't let fear make you make mistakes." Liana breathed in deeply and let those words sink in. Her hands unclenched. She reminded herself that panic from the other side was proof of power, not weakness. They were desperate because they had miscalculated. They had ignored the clause her grandfather had carefully written into the trust. They had underestimated her resolve. She stood up, brushed away the tears, and opened her laptop. It was time to respond. Time to gather every document, every proof, every witness Ebony had advised her to line up. The pressure was real, but so was her determination. For the first time, Liana realized that the fear she felt wasn't a sign she was losing. It was the fire that would fuel her victory. Her parents could try to scare her, isolate her, and twist stories about her. But the truth, backed by law and her grandfather's foresight, was stronger than any rumor. She was ready. The fight wasn't just about money anymore. It was about proving that she would not be controlled, bullied, or silenced. And she was just getting started. Liana stepped into the High Court of Ndola feeling a mix of nerves and steel. The courtroom was vast and formal, the kind of place where silence felt heavy and every whisper carried weight. She wore a simple outfit, neat, professional, but inside her heart pounded like a drum. Months of waiting, of watching her parents manipulate and control, had led to this moment. The judge, a tall man with sharp eyes, looked at both sides and spoke firmly. "I want to see the original trust documents," he said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Without them we cannot proceed." Ebony, calm as ever, reached into her briefcase and handed over the meticulously organized papers. Liana watched as the judge examined the documents, flipping pages slowly, reading aloud sections that confirmed everything her lawyer had told her. Then Ebony stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, these documents prove the deliberate manipulation attempts by the respondents, Ms. Liana Okafor's parents. They tried to override ownership and control the trust fund meant solely for Ms. Okafor." She laid out emails, letters, and notarized statements, each one highlighting the deceit. Liana felt a flicker of relief. Evidence didn't lie. Next, the bank representative took the stand. "We were contacted by Ms. Okafor's parents," the officer explained, voice steady. "They attempted to block her account and gain access to funds without her consent. According to our records, this was done without legal authorization." The courtroom grew quiet. Liana glanced at her parents. Daniel's jaw tightened. Ruth's hands fidgeted on the table. Their faces, once confident and smug, were beginning to shift. Panic crept in. The more the evidence piled up, the more it became clear. Their plan had failed spectacularly. The judge paused, leaning back in his chair, scanning the documents again. He looked at the parents, then at Liana. "This is serious. You attempted to manipulate a legally binding trust," he said slowly, each word deliberate. "Do you understand the gravity of your actions?" Daniel's face paled. Ruth's lips pressed tightly together. For the first time in months, Liana saw fear in their eyes, the fear of losing control, of being exposed, of finally facing the consequences. Liana sat up straighter, feeling a strange calm wash over her. She had expected this, but seeing it unfold, the truth in black and white, her parents' lies unraveling, gave her strength she hadn't realized she still had. The courtroom wasn't just a room of judgment. It was the place where her dignity, her independence, and her grandfather's foresight would finally be recognized. As the judge continued to review the documents, Liana let herself breathe quietly. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't begging. She was ready. Her parents had underestimated her, underestimated the law, and underestimated the power of a promise kept. And now, finally, it was about to be set right. The courtroom felt like it had held its breath for hours. Liana sat straight in her chair, hands folded on her lap, eyes fixed on the judge. Every second had stretched, each one heavier than the last. Her parents fidgeted in their seats, faces pale, whispering nervously to their lawyer. But Liana barely noticed them anymore. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Her grandfather's trust, her future, finally on the verge of being recognized. The judge cleared his throat and spoke firmly, his voice echoing in the silent room. After reviewing all the evidence, including the original trust documents, the testimonies, and the legal arguments, this court rules in favor of Ms. Liana Okafor. Liana felt a flutter in her chest. The words were real. Her name, her victory, spoken aloud in the halls of justice. The trust fund of $680,000 is hereby released immediately to the beneficiary, Ms. Okafor. All attempts by the respondents to control, block, or manipulate these funds are null and void. They hold no authority over this trust. Time seemed to slow as the weight of the announcement sank in. Liana could barely breathe at first. Then quietly she pulled out her phone to check her account. The screen lit up and there it was, bold and clear. Access granted. Full control restored. A shiver ran down her spine. Relief, joy, anger, and vindication all collided inside her at once. Months of fear, betrayal, and manipulation had finally ended. Her hands trembled slightly as she stared at the numbers. Proof that she had won. Proof that her grandfather's promise had been kept. The courtroom stayed silent. Even the murmurs from the back rows had died down. Liana looked at her parents for the first time since the judge's ruling. Ruth and Daniel sat frozen, eyes wide, mouths slightly open. Their confidence, their attempts to intimidate her, all evaporated in an instant. For Liana, the moment was more than money. It was freedom. Freedom from control, from fear, from the betrayal that had threatened to break her. She felt tears prick her eyes, but they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of release, of victory, of finally reclaiming her life. Her lawyer, Abony, gave her a small, proud smile. No words were needed. Liana had done it. She had stood firm, trusted the truth, and now she had power, her own power, restored. The judge banged his gavel lightly, signaling the official end of the hearing. Liana exhaled deeply, feeling the tension drain from her body. For the first time in months she felt entirely, completely in control. Her grandfather had trusted her, and she had proven herself worthy. The trust fund was hers. But more than that, her independence, dignity, and confidence had been restored. The silence in the courtroom felt heavy with awe, but for Liana, it was peaceful. She smiled quietly, knowing she had finally turned the page. Liana stepped into her new apartment at Kafui Riverview, the sunlight bouncing off the glass walls and casting golden reflections across the polished floor. For the first time in years, the space felt entirely hers. She walked slowly from room to room, taking in the view of the river glinting in the morning light. Every corner of the apartment whispered freedom. Every window reminded her that she was finally in control of her life, her money, and her choices. She unpacked slowly, savoring the quiet. Then came the work that had been waiting for her all these months. Liana poured herself into creating an ethical investment plan, focusing on opportunities that truly helped local communities and small businesses. At the same time, she launched a program for women's finance, teaching young African women how to manage money, save, and invest with confidence. It felt like the perfect way to honor her grandfather's legacy, using wealth not just for herself but to empower others. Word of her success spread quickly. Friends congratulated her, colleagues respected her, and even distant relatives began to notice the shift. And then, inevitably, her parents appeared. Ruth and Daniel arrived at her door one afternoon, awkward smiles plastered across their faces. "Liana, we want to apologize," her mother said softly. "We were wrong. We didn't understand." Liana looked at them, calm, composed, and firm. She didn't rush to hug them. She didn't soften her words. "You don't get to manipulate me anymore," she said. "Your apologies don't undo months of lies and control. I've built my life without your interference." Her father opened his mouth, but she shook her head. "No. I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to let fear or guilt sway me. This is my life now and I make my own choices." For the first time her parents looked uncertain. Their usual confidence, the power they wielded so easily, seemed to crumble in her presence. Liana didn't feel anger anymore. She felt something stronger, peace mixed with fierce independence. She had been hurt, yes, but she was no longer defined by their approval or their control. In the following weeks, Liana's days became full and vibrant. She met with young women eager to learn, entrepreneurs seeking guidance, and investors inspired by her ethical vision. Her mornings started with river views and quiet reflection. Her afternoons were spent shaping programs that would leave a lasting impact. Evenings were for reading, planning, or simply enjoying the quiet she had fought so hard to claim. Every time she glanced at her banking app, the balance reminded her of the power she now held. Not just money but the freedom and confidence that came with it. Liana smiled to herself one evening, looking out at the river, feeling unstoppable. Her parents' attempts to control her were now just a memory. Her life, her choices, and her future were entirely hers. And for the first time she felt truly, beautifully free. Liana was in her apartment, reviewing plans for her women's finance program, when she heard the knock on the door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Slowly she walked to the door and opened it. Standing there were her parents, Ruth and Daniel Okafor, looking unusually nervous, dressed in their Sunday best despite it being a weekday. "Liana," her mother began, her voice almost pleading, "we've come to ask for forgiveness. Family forgiveness. Please, can we talk?" Liana stepped aside, letting them in, but she didn't sit. She stayed standing, her posture straight, calm, and confident. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind countless times, but the reality still made her chest tighten. Her father tried to speak first. We were wrong. We never meant to hurt you. We just wanted to guide you." Liana raised her hand gently, stopping him. "Guide me," she said softly but with steel in her voice. "Is that what you call trying to steal my trust fund, freezing my account, spreading lies about me and the family, and calling me unstable?" Her mother's face fell. Her father's jaw tightened. They hadn't expected her to speak so calmly. "I trusted you," Liana continued, voice steady. "I trusted you with my life, my money, and my future. And you tried to take it all. Not because you cared, not because you loved me, but because you were greedy." They shifted uncomfortably, the weight of her words pressing down. Liana let the silence stretch for a moment, letting every word sink in. "You know what hurts the most?" she asked, looking directly at both of them. "It's not that you lost money. It's that you lost your daughter." Her words hit harder than anything she had said before. Ruth gasped and Daniel's face went pale. For the first time they were speechless, stripped of their arrogance and control. Liana didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked toward the door, each step steady and deliberate. She stopped at the threshold, glanced back one last time and said, "I forgive myself for believing in you, but I will never let anyone control me again. I'm free. And this time I stay free." She closed the door softly behind her. The apartment felt lighter immediately. No tension, no fear, no expectations. Just quiet and space that was entirely hers. Liana walked to her window and looked out at the river flowing gently below. The water shimmered in the late afternoon sun, calm, unstoppable. She felt a rush of relief, a sense of finality she had been waiting for her whole life. The past months of fear, betrayal, and manipulation were behind her. She had confronted them, spoken the truth, and reclaimed her peace. For the first time, Liana smiled fully, not the cautious smile of someone waiting for permission, but the free, powerful smile of a woman who knew she could never be controlled again. She was her own person, her own master, her own future. And nothing, not greed, not lies, not betrayal, could take that away from her. Liana sat at her desk in her Kafui Riverview apartment, sunlight spilling across the papers in front of her. She was setting up a new initiative, an education trust for young African girls, giving them the chance to learn, grow, and secure their own futures. She named it the Emmanuel Okafor Scholarship Fund, in honor of her grandfather, the man who had believed in her and left her the means to create change. As she typed, Liana thought about the journey that had brought her here. The betrayal, the blocked account, the courtroom battles, and the parents who had tried to control her. Each obstacle had been painful, but each one had also strengthened her. Now she wasn't just reclaiming what was hers. She was building something bigger, something that would outlast her. Once the initial documents were ready, she leaned back in her chair and picked up her phone. Her banking app. For a moment she hesitated, remembering the panic and fear she had felt months ago. Then with a steady hand she opened it. The screen lit up. Balance. $680,000. Full control restored. A soft smile curved her lips. The money hadn't been touched. Her control was secure. The trust her grandfather had placed in her, and the fight she had waged, had paid off. She felt a deep sense of peace. A quiet triumph that wasn't about wealth, but about freedom, respect, and purpose. Liana looked out at the Kafui River, the water glinting under the late afternoon sun. Her past struggles felt distant now, like shadows fading with the light. She whispered to herself, not in anger or pride, but in clarity and calm. They tried to steal my future, but all they did was unlock it. And with that she turned back to her work, ready to give others the same chance her grandfather had given her. A chance to be free, strong, and unstoppable.